Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Rolling. I just put it on right away, and we just, okay. I'm not big on the formalities anymore. I don't know. I just find that a good conversation is the best way to handle it, and I feel the most good. Casual approach.
I enjoy that. I feel good with that. So I agree.
Yeah, you do. Well, you do a lot of podcasts, right? So,
well, and not a lot, but I have over a couple of years. Yeah. I've done, I don't know, a dozen or more, maybe 15 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, folks, we're here with Dolores Cruz, and you may or may not recognize her. She's been on before, and you can look back to that podcast, which I did with her and Anne Marie Taplin from Helping Parents Heal, and a book that's there. I should have looked up what episode that was, but look back in the podcast, folks, you'll find it on there. So whether you're watching or listening, by the way, I wanted to remind you all now that I am getting them up on YouTube. So you can watch the podcast too if you want to see the person who's talking, or persons, I should say. But Dolores, thanks for coming on again. Appreciate it. And
thanks, Tom. Thanks. Yeah, so good to be here. Love talking with you. It's wonderful.
Thanks. Folks, Dolores and I are acquainted, and we're acquainted before this even happened in the podcast and all that stuff, because we both we're part of grief.com and David Kessler's groups, and Dolores is I think you're still a moderator on there, right?
Yes, I am.
In the groups there. Yeah. So I think I used to see you all the time. I used to go in the spiritual group, right? Is that the one that you've been in?
Yes. There was one related to afterlife, and also one related to just faith, I guess. Yeah. Is the way it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, so I recognized you from there when you came on the podcast and everything. I was like, "Wow, I know you."
Okay,
but we really didn't ever talk there. I don't think, not much. So, but
maybe a little bit.
So Dolores is here. Yeah, Dolores is here today to talk about a couple books that you've put out, right? And we didn't talk about those last time you were on. So, we want to hear your story, Dolores. So, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Thanks. So, I am married to my husband, Joey. We've been married almost 40 years, and we have 4 awesome kids. They're all grown up, of course. I am a retired elementary school teacher, and it's been 5 years since I retired. And I had no idea I would ever write books. Didn't think I needed to for any reason. And sadly, in 2017, my youngest son, who was 24 at the time, Eric, was killed in a car accident, which propelled me and my family onto a really difficult journey, the one that everyone says no one wants to ever have to do. And here we were. And I was just all the details being, it was so devastating, as anyone who's experienced it understands, or if you haven't, you may imagine, that I felt I was in a deep, dark pit of despair, no hope, no light. How could I live again? How could I ever see light or joy, feel joy again? Had no idea how that could happen. I will admit, I did not tell myself it would never happen. I just didn't know how to get there. With, of course, the help of an amazing therapist that I found. I found, by the way, David Kessler pretty quick. Someone gave me a book that he had written, which was a gift, which I think was a way of leading me towards the help. I think I was getting some help there. And he was helpful. My own therapist was helpful. And eventually, after about 8 or 9 months, I guess, I found Helping Parents Heal, which was also just amazing because, truth be told, they have quite a discussion on afterlife and connections with children. This is a support organization for parents whose children have made a transition to spirit. And it was amazing because there I could really talk to other people who have had similar experiences to mine. I was already connecting with my son, Eric, within days. I always knew he was there. I never doubted it, but I started actually getting him, signs and connections with him, which blew me away and comforted me. And here with this in Helping Parents Heal, that was totally validated. So the thing is, I would say about, a couple of months into my therapy, my therapist says to me, "Do you think you have a book in you?" And I said, "I don't think so, because I don't write." I'm not a writer, so I don't know. I don't think so. But the thing is, I had been reading every book I could get my hands on related to grief, afterlife, near-death experiences, and including stories from other parents. I had read a couple that were written, actually parents through Helping Parents Heal, that also just told the story. Basically, just told the story of their child and what happened and their journey and where it's led them. So after reading those, I did think to myself, well, maybe I can do this. Because I've been keeping a journal. I've been writing everything down anyway. And I think about another 3 or 4 months, she asked me again, and I went, well, I don't know. And then probably within another couple months, somebody else asked me, and I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe I should be doing this. And the interesting thing is, this was at about maybe 2 years later. I was still working. I was going to be retiring soon, but I was still working, driving to work in the morning. It's only 15 minutes away. Suddenly, I get this shift, people call it a download. Somehow in that 15 minutes, everything came into my head of exactly how the book would be laid out, how the chapters would go, what would be covered, the order. It was really amazing. I don't know how to describe it. It was unusual. I had never had that experience before. I got to work and wrote it all down. But I didn't do anything with it for about a year. And then COVID hit and we were all at home, stuck at home, couldn't go anywhere. And I said, now I'm going to write my book. So I wrote the first one. which is called Look Around, A Mother's Journey from Grief and Despair to Healing and Hope. And it's a story, it's about Eric. The first third of the book is him and our family and how life was going and, how great it was. And then the next middle part is just the accident, the aftermath, the trauma, the pain, and how those days and weeks unfolded. And eventually the last third of the book is just, I guess I'll call it a transformation. Things just started to shift. I did start to feel joy again. I really opened up spiritually. That was something I didn't expect either. A whole shift in how I saw just the big picture in the world and God, and it was really wonderful. And anyway, the book ends there in that place where I still am and where I'm still evolving because it was a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the first book. I'll stop there for now.
There's so much there. There is a lot. First of all, our trajectory in our grief healing process is almost the same. I don't remember how I found grief.com and David Kessler, but that was early on with me. I knew I needed help right away. Like I was saying that. I literally was saying that to everybody. I need help. I need help. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know where that was going to come from. I had no idea what I wanted help with. I just knew I needed help. And it was that, like you said, that total, you're just totally blown away. There's no essence of you. There's nothing, nothing to grab onto at all. And
Right.
That's where I was when I found that. And then I found that he had an online thing and I work well in that, that scene of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I signed up. It's Tender Hearts, it's called. And so I signed up for that. And then you talked about too, finding help in parents heal. It probably was about 8 or 9 months for me too. And I think I saw a podcast maybe with Susan Giesman, and that's where I heard about helping parents heal. So I found them at that time. But you talk about the stories too, and listening to the stories, and that's where this podcast was birthed out of, actually, and listening to others. And it doesn't matter if they have the same circumstances at all. It's the grief story. And again, there's always something I was like, wow, something I realized out of it or whatever, or something I discovered within myself in it, relating to them in some way. And again, it's so odd because there wasn't anything direct. Like it wasn't the same story. It wasn't the same circumstances or anything like that. And it didn't matter. And so that's where I realized, wow, these stories all need to get out there because someone's going to relate to that in some way. And that happens a lot. And then, So, and then I was wondering when you were talking about the spiritual thing and realizing that things were happening and that Eric was coming to you and everything, did you have any, background in that or anything or experiences like that? Or what was it like for you beforehand?
I grew up I was Catholic growing up, and it was that experience, church, and actually I went to Catholic schools for 12 years. And all of that was great. It was all fine. I know some people have had that experience and they didn't like it at all. It worked. It was good for me. I enjoyed it. I felt a close relationship with God. I really did. I've never not believed in afterlife, heaven, whatever you want to call this place that happens after we leave our physical bodies. So that was all there. I just had no idea what, it's like there's heaven, if that's the word I'm going to use, and that's nice, but it's over there somewhere. And when our, loved ones pass, that's where they go. I had heard interesting stories about connections, and I never discounted them. I found them fascinating, but it never occurred to me I would ever have those kinds of experiences. I hadn't had anything, now in retrospect, there was a little something when my own brother passed away when I was 20 and he was 26. There was a connection there that I didn't recognize until after Eric passed, and I started to see what was happening. So when my brother passed away, I was at school. We knew he had a congenital heart defect, so we knew he was going to, he was not going to live a full life. And that last year, he was really deteriorating. And so even in that last week, we knew it was coming. So I was at my school dorm. I was in bed, had gone to bed. And I had this, what I thought was sort of a dream, where my brother was standing at the foot of my bed, just for a few moments. And that was all I remember. But I found out that the time he passed away was about that exact same time that I saw him. And like I just said, oh, that must have been a dream. But now, no, I think he came by real quick on his as he transitioned to spirit. So with Eric, as I said, I started talking to him. I don't even know why. I just knew he could hear me, and crying out to him and telling him how much I needed a hug. I didn't understand why this was happening. And the interesting thing is that at about 10 days, I went to the store, and there was a couple of those tables set out where people are taking donations for a worthy cause that I recognized because I'd seen them at our school. They would come work with our students, actually. So I was planning on coming out of the store and making a donation. So I came out, and there's a young man, young woman, and I go over to the young man. He's about Eric's size, age, coloring, very friendly and personable, just like Eric. So we had a little chat about the organization that I was donating to. I gave him a check. And when he gave me the receipt, he just said, "So how about a hug?" And that blew me away because, nobody does that. Nobody has ever told me that at one of these tables outside the store before or since. It was only right after I'd been asking Eric for a hug. And here's this young man. I said, I was, a little, I'll always take a hug, and gave him a quick hug. And I felt like I was hugging my son. And when I walked away, I just said, "Oh, Eric, was that you?" Of course it was you. And ever since then, I have had, countless. I could tell you stories for hours and hours, but just no doubt. There's just no doubt. He's around, and heaven is not, I've come to understand, far away, somewhere unattainable. It's around us. And that is why we can have connections with our loved ones, because they're around.
Yeah, I always tell people just investigate it, because we tell you these stories, we've experienced these things, and that's why I asked you that question, because I was a pastor before. I was a Christian pastor, and had my beliefs about things and all of this, and I see a progression now too in my past of where I've come to now, and I believe, much like you, that we exist beyond this plane, and we can be in touch with that plane too, even when we're here, and we can have where there's an awakening happening within us through this and everything. And I thought about the past and things that have happened along the line, and those are the things that we knew then and everything, and that's all fine. And you take them the way that they are, and you receive them or believe in them the way that they are and everything. And so I just try to relate that to folks as they listen to this stuff, because it can seem so far out there for them. And, we're just normal people here who have experienced these incredible things, and they've become reality for us because they are reality. They do happen. And I used to think the same way as you. I'd see miracles, supposed miracles in people's lives happen, or little things happen. And you always say, "Oh, well, that's interesting." And now it's like, wow, I know exactly why that's happening. And I feel things and everything. It's awesome. So yeah, folks out there, just to keep looking into it. That's what we did. That's what you did, right? You started reading books or started looking into it. And,
absolutely. Hearing and even just talking with people who would tell me about experiences that were incredible, that I'm sure other people may say, that was your imagination.
Hmm.
People might say, oh, it's just in your head. And it's now that I've had experiences, I wasn't even asked. I mean, when I said to Eric, I need a hug, I didn't think I was actually going to get one. So
Yeah,
when
yeah,
it happened, and when right after that, I see license plates that say hug on them. It's just, so when you start now hearing these stories from other people, oh yeah, totally there with them. And I think it's amazing. It's beautiful. Yes, it's miraculous too, and so comforting. Yeah.
yeah. Do you find sometimes now that you believe in this and understand this, that when things happen, sometimes you're just like, yeah, thanks, and it's the impact isn't as strong as maybe you think it should be? Did you ever experience something like that where,
Do you mean when I'm hearing a story from someone?
or when, no, when something happens to you,
Oh, you mean like a connection
contact
with my
happens with you?
with my
Yeah,
son?
yeah,
Yes, I have to admit that the first whatever few, I don't know, I can't recall the timeline, but maybe a few months, maybe a year, it was every time it was just so incredible. And now it's just more like, hey, that was a good one, Eric, thanks a lot. And I mean, and I always acknowledge it, I always smile at it. But now it's almost like, well, of course we're connecting, why wouldn't we?
yes,
And yeah.
yeah, and I find they happen so frequent, and I didn't
Yeah.
realize that this year at the conference. I tell the story a lot, but I was at the conference and I realized that if I really wrote down every little occurrence that I would
Mhm.
relate to Jeff, then I would have a binder of like a lawyer or something coming into a case that I'd have evidence of, and that it would be that strong. And so
Mhm.
I didn't need that big burning bush experience, I guess, or anything. And
Right.
but yeah, I feel kind of guilty sometimes when I don't acknowledge it. So what I'll do is I'll kind of just sit back and I'll absorb it more, or just meditate a little bit and try to get in touch with the spirit connection with that, to
Yeah.
try and feel it more, because I don't want to just blow it off. It's so important and it
No,
means
it's
so
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
wonderful.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the book, anything else about the book that you want to relate? I did skim it very quickly and everything. And, yeah, the part that stuck out to me right in the beginning was when you're talking about your life and how life's just normal and you're going along and all of a sudden, bam, and
Yeah.
everything is different,
Oh,
and everything is nothing, and everything is, it's just blown away. And that is, there's so many people in that acute phase still. And just help yourself, just get through yourself those times. What did you do in those initial
mm.
times? I know you talked about getting a book or reading or finding resources or whatever, but what kind of helped you through that early stage, when it's so debilitating?
Yeah, it's true that your everything is blown apart like into a million pieces. It really is that way. And having no understanding of what the future is now. I could not conceive. My family was around. It was really, really difficult to have to call my husband, who was on business in Toronto, and tell him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to get on a plane. And, I mean, and then, of course, my one daughter was with me when we got the knock on the door about what had occurred. And we had to still call my other daughter and son who lived not too far, but they were living on their own. And just having to say that, it's just so like, I can't describe that pain. It's just, and it's incredible. It's like, how could this really happen? Um, I was much in a fog for the next, I don't know, at least a couple of weeks while arrangements were being made for services, which were absolutely beautiful. My husband, who is an event coordinator, he was able to just shift into that mode and really handle a lot of what needed to be done. And my sister was amazing. She stepped right in as well and helped. And other friends did too in their own ways. And it was really wonderful. But I, I guess I was in shock. I felt like I was just in a fog and floating and good for nothing. I couldn't do anything. Now, I took 2 weeks of work off from teaching school. We were near the end of the school year anyway. This was in May of that year, May 12th, 2017. So what I chose to do, I didn't have to. I could have just said, I'm not coming back for the rest of the school year. There was a few weeks left. But I chose after the services were done, after 2 weeks, to go back just because I wanted to pack up my classroom. I didn't want someone else doing it and everything would be all over the place. So I did it. Everyone was lovely at work, including my students who were just so sweet. They were third graders. And my sister came in an hour a day to just work with the kids in case I was unable to do anything, or if I wanted to pack up boxes in my room. Anyway, because she was also a retired teacher. So she was totally capable of doing that legally. And I had, just help. So I had that kind of help. Thankfully, then I had a couple months off to just grieve. And I want to say that because I know I've heard people, I guess, who want to know when am I going to feel better so I can really go back to work and not feel this. And, I don't have an answer for when, but all I know is you got to go through it. And I remember having lunch right after school was out. So this was 6 or 8 weeks later with my sister and a mutual friend. And we were having lunch, and I'm like, not even barely conscious of where I am. And she's like, well, what are you going to do this summer? And my answer was, what are you going to do this summer? I literally said, grieve, because that was the plan. That was it. And I think it's so important. And I know we've learned this from David Kessler, and it's true. It's important to feel all of it. It is actually, it doesn't feel like it, but you're healing when you're feeling all of that and allowing yourself. And he says, there are 1,000 tears to cry. You can't stop at 399. I mean, you have to go through it, and it's brutal. It is brutal. So I allowed myself to feel all that, but I will say that one thing that I found very healing, I don't know why, but within that first week, I felt compelled to go outside under this incredibly magnificent pine tree that we have in our front yard. It's got to be almost 100 years old. I don't know how tall, 70 or 80 feet. It's beautiful. And I just would lie down on the grass under the tree and look up in the sky that was blue with puffy white clouds. And when I did that, I was in a different place, and it was peaceful. It was a relief. It was a respite. And I did that every day for, I don't know, maybe a couple months. And the tree, I know this might sound silly to some people, but the tree, which is Mother Earth, I think called me out to heal, help me heal. And to this day, I'm looking at her now. Nature is healing. So that's one thing I would recommend, is going outside. Even if you can't do anything else, just walk. You need to move the grief through your body, as we've learned through grief yoga, which is one way to move all of that through, or it will get stuck and it will make you sick. Going out in nature, under the tree, or just in a walk in some natural area, just looking at the sky, looking at the clouds, and continuing my conversation with God. That's me. Even though I was not always, how shall I say, sweet about it. I was angry. I was harsh, but I knew that was okay with God. And I knew that I knew I was held and loved, even though it was so painful.
Yeah. Yeah, folks, find your thing, whatever it is. We tell these stories, and again, it's not the same for you. We know that. Just find your thing, whatever it is. Your thing was there, lying there, doing that. I walked, eventually. I didn't in the beginning. It's a fog for me the first probably 2 or 3 months, maybe. I know I was doing something every day, just sitting around in the house. I wasn't working really. I wasn't doing anything, but
Yep.
I think I was looking for my healing things at that time and, looking up stuff all the time and just reading and trying to apply to whatever was relating to me. But find your thing, whatever it
Yeah.
is, whatever you are and what your thing is, and grab onto it. But again, very true. You got to go through it. It's tough. It's almost like an insurance policy. If you go through it now, then you're going to be better in the long run. Just take that from experience, I guess. That's all we can tell you. We can't make you believe that or understand that where you're at if you're very early on, But So I love the spiritual stuff too. That I'm into that and the things that are happening. I'll tell a little story. I had my first dream with Jeff in it 2 nights ago, and it's been 20 months. And I always sat there wondering. I had all these other things happen, and I'm like, why are you not in my dreams? And I don't think it was we who believe these things believe that there's visitations and there's dreams, two different things. You can come up in a dream, and most of our dreams are pretty scattered. They're all over the place. They're really very hard to explain to somebody who didn't see it. They're like looking at you like with four eyes, when you tell them what's going on in a dream. Visitations are different. They're reality pretty much with your loved one, from what I understand. I think this had a little element of maybe both. I don't know. There's a part that I directly remember solid, and it was a comforting thing. It was, and again, it's kind of telepathy. You don't talk to each other really, or I didn't in the dream. Right. My dad died when I was 10, and I've had many dreams throughout my lifetime of him. And it's the same thing, kind of. Maybe we did talk in the dreams at times, but there's an understanding. And this is the way it was with Jeff too, was that there's an understanding that I know that he's gone and he knows that he's gone. And it was almost like he was saying, it's okay, Dad, I'm here. And that's what I got out of it. That was, it was very comforting to say. He was like, Dad, yeah, it's true. I'm here. I am here. And it was like he came out and showed himself, and said, I am here. And so it was very comforting. I didn't wake up in that pain and hurt and everything. I was like, wow, that was great, instead, which was awesome. So, So those kind of things all happen, folks. And the spiritual things, oh boy, I got a book too. I'm thinking of doing a podcast where we just talk about this kind of stuff, because I can go off on tangents with this. But,
me too. I think that would be great.
Yeah. Good. So the book, and the book can be found where?
Yes, on Amazon, easily on Amazon, putting in the title of my other book as well. But this first one that I wrote, again, called Look Around, A Mother's Journey from Grief and Despair to Healing and Hope. That's the subtitle. And then my second book I wrote, 2 years later, let me think. The first one was in 2020, the second one in 23. But this one is different because it is taken from my journals. I've kept journals ever since those last 7 years. It's been 7.5 years. And much of my journaling, as I would go back and look at it, would come out like free verse poetry. So over time, I thought, maybe I could put this into a book. And so I did a year ago. And this one's called A Bird Called Wisdom, which, by the way, the title came from a dream I had, which I can tell you about, which was really cool. So, and it's various, taken selected pieces from my journal that are poetic. They're not rhyming, but they're poetic. And they tell the same story in that very first poem is the day I got the knock on the door. So it starts right out. It's difficult, and it's all the things that occur again, but just shorter versions, more succinct in that poetic form, and into, the connections that are starting to be made, and then eventually into spiritual. When I say spiritual, I mean with God. I mean, really pulling in that and noticing the beauty around me and noticing, again, the birds in the sky and the sunset and the clouds and finding joy in that. So it just shifts, it just moves along similarly as the first book, but the first book is memoir style. So, but yeah, let me tell you, I didn't have a title yet. I had been thinking about titles, and I had this dream where I was in a nondescript space, and this bird was a dove, came and flew right in front of me. And I thought to myself, wow, because I'm connected to birds, and I also connect to Eric with birds as well. But this bird was there, and I thought, wow, I could touch it. And, I've always wanted to do this. And in the dreaming, I put my hands out and I hold the bird. It was like a young bird. I just had that sense of this sweet, young, innocent bird. While I'm doing that, this other dove comes over to the side and is hovering in space next to the first bird. This bird was older and wiser, I could tell. And we had some kind of telepathic conversation or connection, which I don't recall the words. I just know that I was conversing with them. And then that second bird, the older one, said, "It's time for us to go." And I said, "Okay." And as they were getting ready to go, I said, "Wait, what's your name?" And she said, "Wisdom," and flew away.
Wow.
And I woke up and I went, "Oh my gosh, that's a bird called Wisdom. It's the title of my book." I really think it was given to me in my dream. Yeah.
No doubt in my mind.
So anyway,
Wow.
that's how that came about. And that one also can be found on Amazon. And it's been very rewarding. Well, first of all, therapeutics and cathartic to just write these books. And beautiful, of course, when people who've read them will reach out and thank me and tell me that it's helped them, because really that's what it's about. I do want people to know about Eric, just like you want people to know about Jeff. Of course, we keep them alive in that way by telling people. And I believe it's important for all of us to tell our stories in any way, whether it's podcast or book or, just, I don't know, if you want to on social media, that works too. But why would we stop? I think it's important to share. We learn from each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Two great resources. I love the structure, because you go through the whole story in your first book, and then to healing and hope and a positive aspect of it. And then the other things that people would enjoy something like that and appreciate connecting with you that way. And then to get your inner self in the poems book and to have these little, does it go on a progression as well? I mean, because people could take that at different times and say, I'm in this place and I can read this portion of it, this little bit, and connect that way. Is that the way it's set up?
Yeah. Are you referring to the second one? The second book?
Yeah. The poems
Yeah.
book. Yeah.
What's people like about what I like about it too is because they're shorter pieces that will only cover one page. Sometimes it's very short. So a different poem on each page, although a couple of the poems might be over 2 pages, but that would be the length of it. But it's easy to just flip through, read a couple at a time if that's all you want to do, or more. And you're right. There are different stages that people may, depending on where they are in their journeys, where they may resonate more, because they will feel, yes, this is I have had a close friend of mine who sadly her son also passed in a car accident a year after Eric. But she told me, "Oh, I'm right there with you. The poems, especially the ones from the beginning, I absolutely, that was my experience and I resonate." So people will, it's an evolving process, an evolving journey. So people will find what maybe at this moment where they are in that book.
Yeah. And I know I find that I'm My brain's really changed since all of this, and I'm limited sometimes in my absorption ability,
Mm.
or
Mm-hmm.
even giving ability, whatever it might be. I
Mm-hmm.
just know
Yeah.
when to shut down now. So it's nice
Mm-hmm.
to have those little snippets, where you can just take a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
It's similar to like I was working on meditation, and you go and you find all these things on YouTube. You're all over the place, and it's like, oh yeah, I like this one, I like that one. Then I found this guy that does about 15-minute ones, and he instructs
Wow.
you and starts leading you deeper and deeper. And it was perfect because it's like, oh,
Mm.
that's not too much. I can do that. I don't got to sit
Yeah.
there and think about an hour long or whatever. And no, it's not like that. But that's great. Yeah, these little vignettes or whatever, or little snippets that you can
Mm-hmm.
take and maybe just focus on that for the day, process that within your own grief,
Yeah.
that day or something, or that moment, whatever works for you, how much you can tolerate or whatever.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great little resource for sure.
Absolutely.
What else, Dolores? Did we not cover anything uh, that you wanted to with the books or anything like that, or yourself for that matter?
Hmm. I I'm a believer in, gosh, I mean, there's a lot. I do have a lot of topics that I like to cover. For example, just ways to, I guess, honor your loved one would be one way. Also, another thing that I like to talk about is that you need to do this at your pace. And maybe that's something I'll mention right now. It is so common for people who mean well to tell you what you should be doing in your grief. You should be over it by now, or you mean you haven't cleaned out his room yet, or, you post too many pictures, or maybe even the other way around. There are even people who might say, well, you're good now, right? You're all good because you're not crying. And I don't know. It just, so they all mean well. But the important thing is that you don't worry about what anyone else says or thinks you should do. You do what you need to do, whatever that may be. Even going back to work, I've heard people say that people wondered how come they hadn't gone back to work yet, or wow, you went back to work right away. Isn't that too soon? It's whatever is good for you. So I hope you can trust yourself, I guess, is what I would say to people, in that it's not easy sometimes. You just wonder if you're doing something right, and you are. And I know that's what David Kessler would say. Whatever, you can't do it wrong. However you're grieving is the right way for you, and
Yeah,
you're going to move through it. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's great. That's great. Folks, yeah, this is all why we're here too, is reach out if you're experiencing anything like that, or you're not seeing things the way we are, or whatever it is. Just reach out. We can help with resources to direct you places
Yeah.
to assist you in that, or just be a grief friend for you, because that's what's needed most of all. And people don't even realize that it's pretty simple. You just need a friend and someone who's with you in it,
Oh yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To
I,
reach out. Mm-hmm.
yep. I saw I was looking through some TikTok videos today. I put the podcast on TikTok just to get it out there more. And, so I looked up grief, and this one guy comes on, and it starts off with him saying, "Are you freaking kidding me that you're not back to work yet? He died like 2 months ago or whatever, and he's just like, and he's laying into, whoever like this,
Hmm.
about like, you know, and then all of a sudden he turns, and all of that was to show the way that people react to you sometimes."
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very, very powerful. I thought it was great, well done
Yeah.
and great, because that's the way we would receive that, the way he was. And I said freaking, but he didn't say that, he's like,
Okay.
he's like
Yeah.
laying in and just like, totally off the cuff, like not understanding one iota about grief, and just
Mm-hmm.
laying into somebody. And honestly, for those of you out there, maybe around a grieving person, that's the way we kind of receive it when we get these little platitudes or whatever it is that, so we
Yeah.
want to help that conversation and help
Yes.
help people to understand that better too. So that's a big part of
Absolutely.
what's on my heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And, another thing I do want to mention is that about the timetable is you are going to um, actually, it's going to take as long as it's going to take, is what we're talking about. And I, gosh, just believe that if you intend to, I'm going to say the word heal very tentatively because some people don't like that word.
Yeah.
And I'll go into that in a second. But if you have an intention to move to a place where you can have joy again, where you can live again, I believe if you have that intention, you will. I sometimes hear people say, gosh, it's been 4 years and it never gets better. And I feel bad when I see that out on, maybe a group on social
Hmm.
media that's for grieving parents, for example, because I don't think that's first of all, it's not the case for everybody. So I would hope that someone who's wondering how long this pain is going to last won't look at that and say, this is it. This is it for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can get to a softer place, especially if you allow it. Some people feel that they are disrespectful to their loved one if they feel better, if they smile or laugh. And I believe it's just a way that our loved ones, if it was the other way around, first of all, if I was gone and my son was here, I would not want his life to end. I would want him to live his life and have joy and be happy. And I'm right there with him, right? I'm watching, I'm there. So I just think that it's just a way that we honor them. So, yeah. And so if you have that intention, you'll be in a
Yeah.
good place.
I agree. I heard that too in the beginning. I was in early stages and I was listening on, a group somewhere at one time, and they said, you know, I'm I'm 5 years down the line or something like that, and this is horrible, or it's worse than it's ever been, and I'm sitting there thinking in my early grief, oh my gosh, no way
Yeah.
am I going to survive feeling like
Right.
this for 5 years.
Right.
But then on the flip side, I heard some people talk about how their love has grown for their
Hmm.
child it was a child in a children's loss group, and their love has grown more and more as their child
Hmm.
has been gone. And I'm already experiencing that, into my time into it.
Yeah.
And so that's tremendous. And I think there's an important distinction between the grief and the love, of course, because the grieving can lessen. It can lessen, and it doesn't mean that you're losing the love. You'll never lose the love. So,
No.
and it
Yeah.
does grow and get more. It separates, and grieving is a byproduct of that love, of course. But I
Of
mean,
course.
yeah, but it doesn't have to be together. And so don't worry if you're lessening
Yeah.
in your grief. You can have joy. You can live life still, and it doesn't mean that you're dishonoring your loved one at all.
Right. We
So
will
yeah.
always miss them. Of course, we will always miss them. But I have found that the joy and the grief can coexist. And that
Hmm.
seems so odd and it's such a paradox, but it can. You can still feel I do, so joyful about certain things that have happened since Eric's passing. I have a new granddaughter now, and a couple of my other kids have graduated or, gotten certain jobs that are amazing. And I'm joyful for all of that. But it doesn't mean I don't miss Eric. It doesn't mean I still have days where I just shed tears for him. I talk to him, and it's interesting. It's some whole new experience that I guess when you're in it, you don't get. I would never get any of this now until I'm here. So here I am
I'm
doing
going
it.
to tell you, I'm having something like given to me right now
Hmm.
that puts a bunch of things together that I've
Hmm.
been experiencing lately. And one of them comes from sort of the TikTok thing, because you know how you see a lot of I don't want to pigeonhole this, but I mean, a certain generation segment or whatever, where they just seem so miserable with life. There's no happiness. There's nothing good in life. There's nothing like that whatsoever. Whoops.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. That's supposed to be on Do Not Disturb. That didn't
No
work well.
worries.
All
No
right. So,
worries.
yeah. But as you were talking there, and what happens in grief, if you haven't experienced this level of grief, and it doesn't have to be losing a child, it can be losing the loved one that you, or the loss of something that you love.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, my phone's going
That's
crazy
okay.
here. Um, I
Could be
honestly
all
do have it on Do Not Disturb. I don't know if you can see
okay.
that, but it's
There's
on
a
there.
reason. There's a reason. It's okay. It's all good.
Anyways, so back to what I was. Grief takes you to a place in life where you experience things. Life is interesting, folks. Let me put it that way, and it's
Mhm.
way beyond what we can experience in this life is way beyond what we normally experience just going through, normal life with our blinders on, with nothing really happening.
Mhm.
When you experience grief, you start to learn to appreciate things in such different ways, and that there is such a the ability to experience many things at once, like you mentioned, the love, the grief, all at once. You can experience these things, have joy, all these different things can happen. We have the capacity of experiencing all of these things at once. And so, if I could encourage that person who's down in the dumps, who doesn't see anything in life, life has the ability to have that for you. It doesn't have to be a grief experience. It could be life in general. You got to, tap into some things, maybe,
Yeah.
meditate and try to get into the universal source to help you understand those kind of things. But life is a big and wonderful thing. And I think you realize that more when you've lost something
Yeah.
to the degree that we have. And then it brings to light other things and your awareness of them. And, things that seem so important to you are really not important. And you realize that too. I look at the things going on in the world and around me, and I kind of always had this phrase that I really can only take care of the sphere that's right around me. That's all I can really influence, or that really influences me, for that matter. So all
Yeah.
these outside sources, the news, whatever's going on in the world, they're important. And I'm not saying don't be part of them, but that ultimately that's not really where our heart, our love is, all those things that are
Yeah.
the most important things. So,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
It makes
it's so big.
total sense. Yes.
I have a hard
Yes.
time explaining it. I get excited and I'm like, whoa,
Ah,
while all this stuff's going on.
no, yeah.
So that's fun, but
No, it's true. You
awesome.
find out what matters the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Dolores, anything else?
Hey.
Again, like I always say to everybody, of course, your links will be in the show notes. They can find everything there. I'm going to
Great.
start saying that, or get a tag in the beginning of the podcast too, because I think, what about the person that only listens the first 10 minutes or whatever?
Okay.
You got to get it to them too. So, but
That's true.
yeah, anything we missed?
Okay. I don't think so. I feel like we've covered a lot. Yeah. I
Good.
appreciate the opportunity to talk about Eric, of course, and all of this, because it's an important conversation. And I'm so grateful that you have this platform.
Well, I love this too. It's good to get to know you better, and to get Eric to get to know Eric better.
Yeah.
And
and Jeff, and to
our
hear
kids
about
connect.
Jeff.
They're probably up there saying, "Yeah, way to go, Mom, Dad, way to go."
I believe it.
They pull us together, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you for listening today, and Dolores, thank you so much for coming on again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show, or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.